Welcome to What is Essential for Children. During our time together, we will focus on understanding where students are and what is essential for them to learn in order to make substantial growth by the end of the year. In other words, we'll focus on a data system we can use at the beginning of this school year. This module is a part of the SCMTSS framework. Data evaluation is one of 6 components in a multi-tiered system of support. Data systems are an essential element within data evaluation. When thinking of data systems, it is important to remember that they should reflect a collection of assessments used for various purposes. Every assessment should be carefully selected to help you answer a specific question. Every question should lead to improved student outcomes. There are 3 outcomes for participants for this module: defining essential learning for their students, utilizing essential pieces of student data to determine where students are and what they need to learn next to continue growing, and making decisions for whole group, small group, and individualized instruction. There are 3 essential questions that will guide our work around evaluating and triangulating essential data pieces. First, we need to ask ourselves, what few pieces of essential data will help us understand what our students can do and what our students can almost do? Then we want to ask, how do we triangulate this data and use learning progressions to know where to begin instruction? Finally, we want to ask ourselves, how can we provide quality, Tier 1 instruction to meet the needs of all students by focusing on students' strengths and places for growth? Because the needs of children, schools, and districts are varied, the most critical question in this process is, what's essential for your students? This means thinking about what standards they are meeting and what standards are essential for their continued growth. This may look different for everyone. Another difference might be how that question is answered at the beginning of the year and later on as the year progresses. Keep this question in mind as you interact with this module. This module identifies 5 key areas that are essential to our students. We suggest using these questions to guide thinking around Tier 1 core instruction and what it will look like at the beginning of this year when student needs might be more varied. We'll look at what our students can do as decoders of print. What can our students do as comprehenders of text? What can our students do as writers? What can our students do as communicators? And how are our students doing socially and emotionally? These questions may also be used later in the year to progress monitor Tier 1 core instruction. As part of an effective and efficient data system, we want to collect data that answers these specific questions. As a result, we only need a few key pieces of data that answers these 5 questions. Too often, we drown in a sea of data that is more cumbersome than helpful. So, what few pieces of data can we get quickly at the beginning of this year to give us the answers to our questions on slide 6? First, we can use the results from our universal screeners to cast a wide net and quickly gain information about our students. Our next step is to gather additional information to support and triangulate the universal screener data. This informal data collection includes running records, writing and talking in response to reading, writing samples, anecdotal notes, and or checklists about social, emotional skills and communication. Let's take a deeper look at each of these essentials. Essential 1 focuses on what students can do as decoders of print. The question, what can our students do as decoders of print, supports principles of reading standards 1 through 4. An informal running record is a key data piece for these standards. From a record, teachers can learn about a student's understanding of print, concepts of print, syllables, and sounds. A student's ability to apply phonics and word analysis skills, which read while reading accurately and fluently, are also assessed. Informal running records should be around 100 words and should take around 5 minutes to complete. By keeping running records brief, we can quickly sift through several texts with students to determine a starting point for reading. It is helpful to use simple recording forms such as a pre-printed form, blank pieces of paper, sticky notes, or name grids. Let's look at what this might look like in a face-to-face setting with our students. So here you'll see this is a pre-printed form with the text so the teacher can easily mark what the student is doing as a reader. You'll notice that it's short and it only took 3 minutes and 2 seconds to administer. This teacher chose to use a blank piece of paper. She marked on the paper what the student was doing. You can see again it's a short passage. And she also had a comprehension conversation with the student afterward and marked the student's answers on the side. We'll talk more about comprehension conversations on the next slide. And this is another pre-printed form, and you can again see that it's short and the teacher was able to quickly gain information about the student. Many of us will not be with our students in person this year. If that is the case for you, you may want to view the video link to see an example of how running records can be done virtually. Essential 2 focuses on what our students can do as comprehenders of text. The question, what can our students do as comprehenders of text, supports meaning and context, Standard 5. Informal comprehension conversations and writing about reading are key pieces of data for this standard. From a comprehension conversation, teachers can learn what a student is doing to make meaning from text. We can learn about specific skills such as making predictions and inferring. We can also determine how well a student is analyzing and synthesizing text in order to construct their own interpretations. Conversations are not meant to be held in length, but to give a quick idea of what the student is doing in regard to Standard 5. Conversations can be held immediately following a running record, as seen in the example on the previous slide. Another option to expedite the process is to ask students to write independently about what they have read. Choose the option that best meets the needs of your classroom. An example of conversation starters are on the face-to-face link. And these conversation starters are divided into 3 categories: within, beyond, and about the text. One option is to choose 1 or 2 conversation starter from each category that you think will give you the most information about what the student is doing. The link for the virtual classroom features a blog on the Fountas and Pinnell website, which discusses using comprehension conversations in a virtual setting. Essential 3 focuses on what students can do as writers. The question, what can our students do as writers, supports writing standards 1 through 3. A student writing sample is a key piece of data for these standards. Writing samples can tell us how a student can apply their understanding of argument, informative, and informational writing. Because the needs of students and schools vary, you will need to decide whether you want to assess all 3 areas or just one area. In most cases, a writing sample can be collected from an entire class in about 20 to 25 minutes. It is important to refrain from conferring and/or teaching during this time. We want an accurate assessment of what students can do, what they can almost do, and what they need to learn next. A resource providing possible writing assessments across multiple grade levels has been provided in the face-to-face link. These assessments may be adapted for use in a virtual classroom also. Follow the virtual link for a resource on how to use an electronic platform to upload student work. Essential 4 focuses on what students can do as communicators. The question, what can our students do as communicators, supports Communication Standard 1. Anecdotal records and checklists are a key piece of data for this standard. From anecdotal records, teachers can determine how well their students are developing and communicating their own ideas to others, as well as learning from the ideas of others. A key component for notes is observing how students are interacting with each other. The resources on the face-to-face link offer ideas for collecting this data. The virtual classroom link offers a resource for supporting student-to-student interaction in a virtual setting. Essential 5 focuses on how students are doing socially and emotionally. The question, how are our students doing socially and emotionally, supports the 5 core competencies from CASEL. Anecdotal notes and checklists are a key piece of data for the competencies. By clicking on the link, you have access to more information about these competencies. Notes or checklists should be focused on the social and emotional well-being of students. During the 2020-2021 school year, understanding and supporting the social and emotional well-being of our students, our colleagues, and ourselves is more important than ever. The face-to-face link provides access to an example of a recording form. This example may be used as is or modified to meet your needs. The virtual classroom link provides resources for written activities that may be uploaded to an electronic platform and still provide teachers with some knowledge about their students' social and emotional learning. Now that we've taken a look at ways to determine what is essential for our students, let's take a look at how we might collect this essential data in both a virtual and face-to-face classroom. In a face-to-face classroom, we should have around a 2-hour block for ELA. This example is a classroom of 25 students, and the teacher has a target for completing data collection within 3 to 5 days. You'll notice on the left-hand side the list of data that she's gathered each day and the number of students that she hopes to gather the data from. In hour 1, you'll notice that is her reading block, and she has a 15-minute reading lesson, and then the children work independently for 40 minutes. Now, the 40 minutes is going to need to be differentiated for your particular classroom. A first grade child will not have the stamina to read independently for 40 minutes at the beginning of the year. So if I'm a first grade teacher, I want to modify that. During this time, the teacher is gathering data, running records, social emotional comprehension. She is meeting individually with students with a target of 4 to 6 students per day. And the students are reading independently, writing about their reading, and writing about their independent reading. The class comes back together for a wrap up and share. In hour 2, we follow the same format. However, this focuses on writing, and there's a writing mini lesson to set up the data collection. Again, there's a 40-minute independent writing time that can be modified to meet the needs of your children and your grade level. During this time, the teacher's gathering data. She can still be conducting running records and taking notes on social and emotional learning. She has a goal of collecting data and doing running records on 4 to 6 students. And at this time, all the students are completing the on-demand writing sample. In a virtual classroom, it's very similar. However, our times are a little different. In ELA, students should spend no more than 90 minutes a day in ELA. This gives us 2 45-minute blocks. There is a virtual class meeting and mini lesson for 15 minutes, then 20 minutes to read independently. The thing that is different here is if the teacher wants to meet with students to conduct running records, she could do that in breakout rooms. And the huge difference that is very important is during this time, students log off their device and they go and work independently. This is important so that students aren't tied to devices for long periods of time. And it is replicated in the writing block. And again, students log off their devices to complete their writing and then upload their work to the virtual platform. Once the few focused pieces of data that answer the 5 essential questions have been collected, the process of analyzing and planning may begin. The Sort Stack Plan protocol is one method to effectively and efficiently complete this process by engaging in 3 simple steps. First, look at the student's work to quickly discover what the student is currently able to do and what they need to do next to continue growing in regard to the pre-selected criteria. These learning criteria should be chosen from a learning progression or continuum that your school is currently using, such as the Fountas and Pinnell Continuum for Literacy Learning, Writing Pathways, Performance Assessments, and Learning Progressions, Reading Pathways, the NWEA Learning Continuum, and the soon to be released South Carolina Learning Progressions. It is recommended to only choose 3 criteria for sorting. As the quick review is conducted, the student work should be placed under the learning criteria that corresponds with what the student needs to learn next to continue growing. Again, it is important to keep in mind what the student is doing, almost doing, and will be able to do next with explicit instruction. Finally, once the student work is sorted, look for whole group and small group patterns that can be identified for instructional goals and look for individual needs that can be identified and addressed. Once student work is sorted and stacked and you're looking for patterns for instructional goals and plans, keep these 3 questions in mind. Think about what most of the students need to learn next to continue growing, and then create whole group mini lessons. Think about what some of the students need to learn next to continue growing, and then create small group lessons to teach. And finally, think about what a few of the students need, and then create individual teaching opportunities. You can follow the link for a video that shows the sort stack plan process being utilized with student writing. Here's another example of the sort stack plan protocol being used with student reading. The purpose of the sort stack plan protocol is to help us quickly determine where our students are and where they need to go. The outcomes are instructional goals for whole group, small group, and individualized instruction. It is helpful to utilize a recording form or method to capture thinking that effectively and efficiently sets up our next step, the planning process. A link is provided to an example which may be utilized as is or adapted to meet individual needs. As a reminder, there's more than one way to sort by learning criteria. This chart provides a few ideas of additional ways to sort around each of the 5 essentials. The key element is determining ways to sort. In determining ways to sort is to use a learning progression to determine specific criteria. The example in this module utilized learning progressions from Writing Pathways to quickly determine the 3 criteria and skills under each. In order to expedite the process, it is important to use the learning progression and resources with which you are the most familiar. So now you try it. Use a data set from your class to sort, stack, and plan to make decisions for whole group, small group, and individualized instruction. Remember to think about the guiding questions. What are the students already doing? What are they attempting to do? And what instruction will support the students in continued growth? As a result of today's module, participants should be able now to define essential learning for their students. They should be able to utilize essential pieces of data to determine where students are and where they need to go next, and they should be making decisions for whole group, small group, and individualized instruction. 3 key areas to reflect upon are thinking about how this process has impacted your thinking around data collection and analysis to inform student learning. How do you plan to act on this thinking? And what questions do you still have, and what additional support do you need? If you have more questions or need additional support, contact your literacy specialist.